And let's talk about probably the one that's a little more important in the minds of college football fans, and that's out of the Big Ten. Paul Chryst out at Wisconsin after a 2-3 start. He's no longer the head coach. Interim coach will be Jim Leonard, their defensive coordinator. A lot of thoughts here, Stephen. We'll give it to you. What do you think about this right off the bat?
I have to admit, I am surprised, just as from a fan standpoint. I mean, Wisconsin, they have had a gradual decline since 2020. Even though they won 9 games last year, they started off slow, so they had to really rally to get 9 wins. But I think there was a statement that was released by the AD, Chris McIntosh, and it was one line that jumped out at me, and I think it probably explains why Paul Chryst is no longer the head coach of Wisconsin. In the statement, he was called the decision to fire him, because they don't call it a firing. They always call it something nice. But basically, it was in the best long-term interests of the program. So that tells me a couple things. One, people at Wisconsin are getting a little bit nervous about the Big Ten expansion and adding all these teams and being able to keep pace with the Ohio States and the Michigans, and then you'll have USC and UCLA coming in soon. Or we think UCLA is coming in soon. We still don't know that for sure, but I mean, we're assuming they're coming in. But I also think that is a reflection on the type of recruits that Paul Chryst brings in. And it was the same criticism he had when he was the head coach at Pitt. Good football players. They didn't play fancy, light up the scoreboard kind of football. They were role players. They knew their job. They did it well. And I think to compete in this new environment and this new landscape, I think they're looking to maybe bring in a different kind of coach. And again, Jim Leonard, great defensive back at Wisconsin. He's done a great job with the defense there. He's well respected as far as his understanding of making in-game adjustments for defenses. But I don't know, given that statement, if that's where Wisconsin's going to go.
Yeah, that's a really interesting concept with Wisconsin. And the reason I think that is because they seem to always follow the same style of play. And if they find a way to stick to that and do successful, they are successful. We saw it under Brett Bielema, who had in his 6 years, he had 3 conference titles. That's something Paul Chryst didn't accomplish. Now he has a better bowl record than Bielema did. And he's, the records are pretty close. That's why I'm comparing to Brett Bielema. And how close are they? Well, Paul Chryst was 67-26. Brett Bielema, his time at Wisconsin, was 68-24. So almost identical. But Bielema won conference titles. Now, that could be the fact that maybe the Big Ten wasn't as strong. I don't know. You be the judge of that. The Big Ten's always been something to really work around. Obviously, Michigan wasn't the same back then, but Ohio State's always been Ohio State. Again, you be the judge of that portion. Paul Chryst won bowl games. Great, fantastic. But as you said with the athletic director's comments for long-term future, that's winning the Big Ten. That's getting to the college football playoff when it's expanded, because I think that's what their long-term goals are. I think they know that they probably can't find their way in the next year or 2 or maybe 3 years, depending on logistics, that they're not going to make that 14 playoff, but they easily can make a 12-team playoff. Wisconsin is a team that you could see make that and not be surprised that they're there. So Paul Chryst heading out their way, but you say that they might make a change in a different direction. They have a really tough time doing that, I think. And the reason I think that is because Wisconsin is such a unique recruiting area because of where they're located. And, they get an idea to, draft the big guys so they can, build up front. They have a whole bunch of big guys in the Midwest up north there, and they can recruit them. And then they have a hard time getting some of those skilled players away from the SEC, away from the ACC, and up to the Big Ten in Wisconsin to play. I think that's, usually in the past, their idea is to play smash mouth football in your face is good. But changing it up, is that something that they want to do? I just don't know. And that's why I think Jim Leonard, if he works out pretty well, is a shoe in my opinion. If he can find a way, the players already love him. We know that. We've seen that in the past. If they find a way to maybe rally here at the end, right now, obviously 2-3 record, if they could find a way to get the 6 wins, and I know that's not saying much about a Wisconsin Badger team, but after firing your coach, if you found your way to make it to a bowl, then that's impressive. Jim Leonard has a shot here.
Well, he does. I mean, and I think he's a terrific football coach, but I really think it is the new, I don't want to say improved Big Ten. I think that has to be seen over the next 4, 5, 6 years or so. But if you're going to use the same kind of recruiting model and try to bring in the same kind of players, Jesus Christ would not win a Big Ten title in Wisconsin.
Nice.
Okay.
I like that.
Yeah. I like wordplay is like one of my favorite things there. But so I think Jim Leonard, unfortunately, is the right man in the wrong time.
Yeah, that's
So
fair.
yeah, so I mean, again, and Wisconsin could, I mean, their schedule's not that daunting the rest of the way. They should get to 6 wins. They'll get to a bowl, but I don't know. I just don't see if Wisconsin was going to make Leonard a full-time coach, I think they would have waited to the end of the season. As it is, they owe $16.4 million to Chryst, unless they can find some way to say that he was fired, with cause. I mean, Chryst can say, look, I don't see why I got fired. So I want my 16.4 million. It could be an interesting negotiation there. But plus, I think there might be some names out there, not Urban Meyer. Wisconsin fans, I'm not going to say that. It's okay. No, he's not going to Wisconsin. He's not going to work in Madison, Wisconsin. He's just not. But I think there's going to be some really good coaches out there that could come into that program and really electrify it.
It takes a special person to be able to coach at Camp Randall. It really does, because of special recruitment, because of the intense play of the Big Ten, and because of the expectations of this program. He was sitting around almost 80% win percentage, and that wasn't enough. In a lot of schools, that's plenty. It's just not enough for Wisconsin. You look at the rest of the schedule, and yeah, you're right. They do have a shot. I think they show up against Northwestern next week. Northwestern's not a good team this year. We know that. Then Michigan State, which we're going to talk about Michigan State in a little bit. We know that they are definitely underperforming. Purdue, I don't know about Purdue. We might see some thoughts there. Then Maryland, Iowa, Nebraska, and Minnesota. So, I mean, right off the bat, I can see 3 wins. They need to get 4. I think they can easily steal one from one of those remaining teams. So I think it's doable to get to 6 with this Wisconsin football team. And Jim Leonard might have a shot. I do think that if there is a coach that they go after, one that strikes my fancy, Steve, right off the bat when I'm looking at potential candidates, and it's not Urban Meyer, like you said too. It's not Deion Sanders. He's going to Auburn. I like Bill O'Brien. I think Bill O'Brien really would be a good fit in Wisconsin. What do you think about that name?
Isn't Bill O'Brien a different version of Paul Chryst? I mean, different offensive philosophies, but I mean, really the same kind of coaching mind. And and I never quite got the hatred that Bill O'Brien got when he was in the college ranks. Okay, in the pro ranks, yeah, okay, he screwed up. He screwed up a pretty good situation down in Houston, but it wouldn't be a terrible hire, I don't think. But I just think it's going to have to be. Who immediately jumped in my brain was Eric Bieniemy, because it's obvious that he's not getting a head coaching job in the NFL anytime soon, and they're going to keep using that thing. Well, yeah, he's a great coordinator, but he's never been a head coach anywhere. I can see Eric Bieniemy jumping into a situation like Wisconsin, really making his mark. I'm not saying he's going to stay there a long time, but he's a guy that's going to get media attention. He's going to be a terrific recruiter. He's got a positive attitude. He's tenacious. He's the kind of coach you would think you would have in the Big Ten. So, and again, I didn't see anything that Eric Bieniemy even wants to coach in college. But if he wants a head coaching job in the NFL, unless he wants to go to Jacksonville or a team that's really, the dregs of the earth, I think him coming to college, coaching a few years, putting up a good record, that's going to get him his dream job in the NFL.
That's a good way to look at it. And if you're talking about, you think that Wisconsin needs to change their ways of playing football, that's a good way to start. because that is a completely different offense that we have seen with Wisconsin ever. So that's an interesting.
And
I just think that the Bill O'Brien one, it just like if we got a tweet in the next, I don't know, in the off season, let's just say, because Leonard's going to finish the season out. They're not gonna get rid of the interim coach, even if you went 0-7 the rest of the way, because they love Jim Leonard. He was a great player. He's in a bad spot. So if they're not going to make any hiring until the offseason, let's just be aware. But if we saw a tweet that said Bill O'Brien was hired by Wisconsin, I would be like, that tracks. Now, I get it. That's just something that they've done those kind of hirings for years. For the most part, it's worked out. We've seen Wisconsin. I mean, how many times have we seen in the preseason when you're looking at the odds of how many wins they're going to get? It's like 9.5 or 10.5. They're always predicting them to get 9, 10, 11 wins a season. So if they decide that they want to keep that route and say, we think that we can compete in the Big Ten, because that's as far as we need to. We just need to compete, get into that championship game. If we win, great. But if we lose, we still have a shot to be in the top 12. If we lose the Big Ten championship, but we're still in the top 10, top 15 ranked, we have a chance to get one of those 6 at-large bids. We can hit into the expanded playoffs. I think that's where they're looking. Now, do they look and make a drastic change like you said? Very well could as well. And I think that might be the long-term solution as well, to change up the entire program. But again, I just wouldn't be shocked if it was someone like a Bill O'Brien.
Yeah. No. Bill O'Brien, I mean, he should be on every university's radar that's looking to make a change if they haven't already made a change. At the head coaching position, I just don't know that he's that much different than Paul Chryst. And for Wisconsin to be willing to potentially swallow 16.4 million, I'm sure they'll negotiate it down, to a paltry 8 or 9 million. But I don't see them making that kind of financial commitment to change to then bring in a Bill O'Brien type.